Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. It's lovely to see such a high turnout. We didn't expect that. So yeah, thank you ever so much for coming. Yes, so this is maybe a cautionary tale. So I'm sure everyone in this room has had some experience or difficulty with getting academics to log just about anything, actually, especially when there's no funding involved. So this is just something we tried to make inputting activities a little bit easier for our academics. So that's, oh yeah, slides are up there, that's great. So yeah, we're from the University of Southampton. I'm Jason Milburn, I'm the Research Information and Systems Manager. And we've got kind of a general problem in that academics sometimes find putting things into Pure a little bit difficult. So, and it can be difficult for the faculties to get academic buy-in as well and to train academics. So we kind of were speaking and thought, can we come up with a different way of getting people to input data into Pure? So we thought we'd start with activities, and you'll find out why in a second. But yeah, this presentation is about our experience with that. And we went down the XML route and Microsoft Forms. So yeah, you'll get to hear about how we went about it. So I'm going to hand over, oh no, I'm doing this bit, Lee, sorry. So the reason we started with activities is, oh, that's just a bit about a Pure usage. I think we'll skip over that and go straight to knowledge exchange. There we go. So yeah, the reason we started with activities more into Pure is because knowledge exchange enterprise is something that's not really well defined. So we're making a lot of effort at the university and in the UK really as well into identify what activity qualifies as knowledge exchange enterprise. The question might actually be what doesn't qualify really in some respect. So, and we thought that activity in Pure is also not overly specific. There's loads of different categories. There's lots of different things that could go in. So we thought they could match quite well. So we decided to go into activities. We've got just a quick diagram here of all the different things that kind of could feed into something that would be recognized as knowledge exchange enterprise. And this shows that we do need a unified approach as well for logging it and defining it across the university. You've got everyone from kind of public engagement and research innovation services. It's a big part of REF because of its adjacency to impact. And across all the faculties as well, there's all this different activity going on, and we just really desperately needed a place to log it and monitor it. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lee now. He's going to take you through some of the challenges we've had so far with recording activities and knowledge exchange enterprise.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so I'm going to talk through some of the challenges and why we decided to go down this route and do things a little bit differently. So one of the big challenges we have at Southampton is that activities for academics is not mandatory. So we need some encouragement to get them to add that activities data in. Unlike research outputs, they're very familiar with that. They put that data in, as part of their contractual obligation. So we really need some leadership, someone to drive their reason to be putting the activities in, someone to wave the flag for key and activities, and to, we've said needs a good carrot. So like the donkey and the carrot, it needs someone to say, here's the benefits, put it in, and we can do this for you. Key's super broad, so we've put a couple of examples up there. You can see we've had some activities at the Southampton Science Comedy Show. So someone's done like a stand-up routine on their research, to marine expeditions in the Arctic, so right up in the Arctic Circle. So you can see that they're completely broad. So we need to encourage people to actually, however their key activity falls into, to log that in Pure so we can have that holistic record. We've also had feedback from our academics that the activity structure in Pure isn't always a natural way for them to record key. So they log in and they get a bit confused about where do I put things, what do I do? So we wanted to make that a bit more simpler for them, so that when they went in, they didn't feel pressured and not know what to do. And also, obviously, big thing with REF is we need to link with impact. So we want to create a way of linking the key activities with impact, because at the moment, we need to find a more robust method to do so. And we've put a big R there because, you know, missing information. So we want to make sure that we can capture all the information, because one of the other benefits of that is to enhance our web pages. So our Pure data drives our web pages. The slides disappeared there, so it's obviously had enough. But yeah, we need to drive our web pages. So drive the actual content on our web pages to make sure that information is filled in, like descriptions, like titles, short titles, and that sort of thing. We don't currently validate that information, so unlike research outputs, which get validated, we're back. Yeah, as you can see, we don't currently validate that, so no one's checking that that information's been filled in. I'm going to skip this because Jason's going to cover that later, so just in the interest of time, I'll skip past that. So what did we do? So you can see we've created another lovely diagram of our, just an overview of the process. So we have this community of practice that for knowledge enterprise and exchange that meet regularly, and we've been along as part of that, and we agreed on a Microsoft Forms method, and the reason for that was because one of our faculties, humanities, already used a Microsoft form, and they really liked it. They presented it to the community of practice, and they thought, this is great. Why don't we all do that? So we thought, okay, we'll adopt that, but we want the information in Pure, so how can we get it in Pure? So what we did was we drafted a first branch, which was just editorial work. We then added test data to that and tested the XML sync in, we call it our pre-production environment or staging. We then, after we knew, okay, this actually works, we can do this, we felt quite clever, so then we thought, right, we'll build the whole form, all the branching for activities, and then add test data to that, and then see if we could upload that. And then the next steps will be actually user acceptance testing, then go into a launch, and then just continuous improvements. We really like the API, our team like playing around with it, so that might be something that we do in future as well. So as mentioned, you can see here, this is the humanities form, and then you can see on the left-hand side just an example of one of the bits of information from our form. As mentioned, we liaised with the community of practice to design the form. We forced mandatory fields so we could capture the mandatory data. And as mentioned, we don't want things missing that it's going to show on our web pages, and also for reporting purposes, and also so that the actual XML schema would work, so we could match the compulsory columns and fields in there. We tried to keep it as close to Pure as possible, just because it was easy, but we just tried to simplify some of the language just because, not to panic academics, really. So as mentioned, we created the first draft, we showed it to the community of practice, and they're going to be really instrumental for us for finding UAT participants. And then we created just a really quick manual XML sync, so you can see an example here. We use Copilot, so a big shout out for AI. So we use Copilot to create, really to help us, taking the Excel outputs from the form to create the XML schema so we could sync that in. And then there's just an example of the form, how it looks. Yeah, so once we knew we could do that, we then, Jason, who's very clever, put together an activity upload tool to do so. But I'm just going to mention quickly just some of the issues you might find if you choose to do this yourself. As many of you probably have, we've got tons of managing orgs in Pure. You can't put that amount in a form. That's ridiculous. So we just went with faculty level. We put 5 faculties as the managing org that they can select from. And maybe we implement a workflow so that can be changed at a later point in time. It has a 200 question limit, so we use the branching. Don't ask for staff ID for every question, just link back to it. Then you've only done the question once. And unique identifiers, so creating a lookup, so when you convert it to XML, you have the unique identifiers to go back to is really key, which I'm sure Jason will probably touch on. So I'll pass you back over to Jason.
Thank you, Lee. That was really, really well presented. So, yeah, as Lee said, so once Lee has done his fantastic work with the form and did all the branching and all that good stuff, we needed to translate the form responses to XML. So, we did this. You might ask why, but I did choose to do this in VBA, and I'll tell you why. So, I'm already fairly proficient in VBA, so that was a tick. It's already integrated into Excel, so that was another tick. I could just get started immediately. I didn't have to worry about any external middleware or anything like that. And I find because I know it, it would be quite easy to then train someone else on how to run it if needs be. So I got the VBA to pick up the form responses, and basically we tried to use as many common fields as possible to reduce the size of the code. Something that I really liked after we uploaded it was the fact that it gets uploaded into Pure with a sync ID. You can tie that back to the form response ID, so you can then use that to validate the responses and if they've been set up correctly in Pure. So in terms of the workflow, so the form would be completed. Power Automate would then send an email to our team just to say that there is a new response. And we didn't get around to automating that part, so it's a case of the responses would be collected in a file, and then someone from our team would then just basically drag the file to Pure to upload via XML. So you can see here a little bit of the VBA setup. So the tool pulls the data into a VBA, just an array data type, because it's really quick to read through. With syncing in XML, it's important that you don't delete any of the previous data because then it desynchronizes, so you have to keep that pool of responses ongoing, essentially. I used class modules for the different types of activity because they've all got slight nuances, so you couldn't use the same code for each one. You had to make sure you were editing it to deal with the different types. Like with editorials, you've got journals, events, publisher, that sort of thing. And you can see an example of how the data went into the array there. A future improvement, we probably would move to use Python or something with PHP, which would allow more automation. This is just an example of the XML file that my VBA code produced. So you can see here you've got a list of these are the different activities that we used in the form. So these would be the form responses. You've got the IDs there, and you can expand them and that's what an expanded one looks like over there. It's all automatic. And, oh yeah, so we wanted to automatically, eventually, if we decide to launch this more further, we would go ahead and have the XML synced in automatically to save someone the job of basically dragging the file into Pure. So that could be a future improvement. So one thing that we didn't expect to do, but I thought was really handy, was the fact that you can actually pull activities from the new API. And I thought, well, we need a way to validate this really easily without having to go into Pure to check all of the records individually. So I'll show you an example of that query later, but this is basically what I managed to pull out from Pure. So this is a list of the responses that you just saw in the XML file, and they've got a sync ID here, if moving my head out of the way, and a UUID, so you can really easily link back to the actual Pure record. And we thought a future improvement there would be we could email the academics who filled out the form and include a link to their record that they just created. So they would get an email confirmation. They could click straight into it and go to their record in Pure to add any more information and things like that. Some difficulties we had was the fact that I didn't realize or I didn't see, but there didn't seem to be a way to download classification types via the API. So I had to go in and pull those out manually. And if you are going to go down the XML route, it's really important you get familiar with the XML schema, which you can download from Pure itself, because there's some really kind of confusing differences with some of the basic, like the schema definitions. So you'd expect start date and start date not to do anything different, but if you use the wrong one, basically you can't upload it. So all that kind of thing, really. But that's an example of why this activity was really valuable for us, because we've learned a lot about how to upload things and sync things via XML. Just a couple more examples here. So like Lee mentioned, we only chose to go with our faculties at this point, or the university as a whole, as a managing organisation, because there's just too many and it would be confusing. And the whole idea of this was to make this process easy for people so they would actually do it. There's an example of a constructor function there. and also a lookup table. So there was a tab in the Excel sheet for each type of activity, and because you can't, the XML schema needs the classification bit in column C there, so I had to create a lookup basically. Otherwise, you'd have to have the form built with those classification scheme, which are a little bit confusing. So that was an extra step we had to put in, and roles as well. The roles don't necessarily always look like they do to the user, so there's another bit of translation happening there as well. Just some more examples of the code if you're interested. I won't go through these in detail. Just an example of how, the logic used. So you can see here you've got if there's no ISSN, don't fill it out and things like that. And wherever it's a journal publisher or an event, you can do different things depending on whether it is or isn't. And this was an API request. So annoyingly, you couldn't get the sync ID from the activities query. So you could query and get a batch of activities from the API, but I didn't see the ability to get the sync ID as part of that as a field. So what I did was downloaded all of the activities via API, filtered those down to ones that were created by sync user, and that was my form responses. And then I basically did another, I made a custom function where it basically went through that list and added the Pure ID onto it to make a new API call, which would then query that activity specifically, and then you were able to get the sync ID from that API call essentially, and then add it as another column. So that was how we got the activity responses back into Excel to validate. So there's still some issues. We haven't gone full launch with this because we don't really have a very good way to handle errors at this point. So if someone does put some erroneous data in, it will fail in the XML log. And the XML log in Pure is okay. The error messages get you some of the way, but you do need to do some investigation. So there's that extra work that would be involved there. As a couple of other talks have mentioned, bad data can just get worse over time. And another reason we haven't decided to fully launch this is because we haven't figured out a way of looking up existing journals, events, and publishers against ones that already exist in Pure. So if someone enters a slightly different name of an event or something, it's going to create a new one, and it could be the same. So you're going to have tons of duplicates. There is a potential of using the API to search through events and things like that. I believe that's possible with posting a JSON request, but we didn't have time to go down that route at this point. But it's definitely on our list to investigate. And then that might allow us to do some string matching logic with Python or something like that, and reduce the number of duplicates. Now, in the interest of time, we haven't done any UAT, but if we did, we were going to get a group of interested academics, essentially, to fill in the form with real data of activities they've created and try and sync it and see what happens, essentially, because their data is always going to be different to the data we put in. So that's what we would have done. Once we would have launched with quite a basic version. We've only got mandatory information in the form so far. Another reason this wouldn't be ideal to launch right this second is because without some extra information about the activity that the form doesn't support just yet, the record isn't specific enough to be of really high quality. So a lot more work would need to go into what else we can get from the academics filling in the form. And just some benefits. So a reason generally tracking activities in some way is beneficial is because, we need to track these activities before we can actually figure out the benefits fully. So improved engagement with key data entry. So knowledge exchange enterprise is still quite a new topic in the UK especially. Identifying potential impact early in a project. Key and impact usually go hand in hand, so the earlier you have an idea of what impact might be created, the better, because you can start building that narrative. Visibility of the activity happening across the institution, especially things that aren't linked to money. It's becoming another hot topic in the UK, what stuff's happening that isn't funding related. better reporting, narratives, as I've just said, tracking outcomes as well, so outcomes of research, areas of excellence, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to present a finished project maybe next year. That might be a bit ambitious, but yeah, thank you ever so much for coming along. It's been really nice to share this with you. Even though it wasn't a total success for us, we have learned a ton, and we've got lots of inspiration for future ideas. So if you have any questions about what we did, feel free to ask now or catch me later on. If you've got any suggestions of how we can make that better, I am all ears. So yeah, thank you ever so much, everyone.
It certainly met my expectations, just to get that off the table. Thank you so much. What a great case in data management in and out of Pure. And we have a question up here already. Running.
Hello. How do you deal with several people and their roles on the form and collecting that information?
So do you mean the role they had in the activity they're logging?
Yes. So if you ask a person to fill in the form about their activity and there are more than one person, and each of them have a different role, so how do you collect that?
We didn't get around to adding more than one person, did we?
No, that is a good question. That's something we haven't thought about yet, really. So we were mainly using that form to capture like that one person. But that was something we were thinking maybe if we introduced like a workflow so that the activities were being validated, maybe it could be a case that whoever was validating the activities could then add in the extra people. But it's a really good point, and it is one of the things that I think we definitely sort of may have, hopefully, if we do launch, try and incorporate in the future.
We could do something like a field where you could say, are there any other people involved in that? If yes, then it would generate a mandatory field. So they would have to fill in a staff ID or something, and then we could look it up. So yeah, maybe something like that.
All right. Another question?
I think that, sorry, Lillian from Maastricht University, Netherlands. I think that we all know that activities are important and important to register. I think that a lot of us also find it very difficult to fill in Pure for activities, and you find a solution for it. But I would want to ask, which of you have also problems with filling in activities in Pure? We are the only institution.
We should have done a show of hands at the start, shouldn't we?
So why are we developing something new where we buy a product that should deliver us that?
Yeah, that is yeah. I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
You don't have to answer that question.
No, I don't think I could, but I completely agree. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello. We have a similar situation, and we create an Excel with different spread with sheets, and one sheet for all the knowledge exchange, all the columns. So every researcher has their own copy.
Okay.
Or create the copy with a link, and then so they can fill in a couple of days or months. They can see all the activities. For instance, all the thesis of the students, they can fill the names, and another day they can fill the dates, whatever, because sometimes it's hard that they have all the information at the moment they go to Pure. That's
another good point. Yeah, that is another good point. So the idea was that we would be able to confirm back to the person filling in the form that the activity had been created, provide them that link, and then there would be unsynchronized fields that they could just amend themselves. So they could fill out that information over time. But without testing, we wouldn't have known if that was a good way of doing it or not. So maybe having a living document, like you've just explained, where...
living document, and then up to a certain time, then we create a database.
Yeah. It's another good suggestion. Takes the form out of it.
Okay, just a quick question, please.
Just to mention, we are from Manchester University, so we do it slightly differently. So what Laura does is she exports activity data from research visions, pass the spreadsheet to us. So then we create XML, apply XSLTs, and then create the import XML file and just do a ingest, and then the data is editable in Pure, so academics can go and improve it. I think the first part is you're having a form that's slightly different at the beginning.
Yes. I don't know how good the research fish data quality is for activities.
Yeah, we we do a similar thing with our outputs where we link our outputs from ResearchFish and then link them back to the projects so that they have those linked outputs on the web page. But yeah, we really want to be able to get our ResearchFish data because like you academics are filling in this, they're filling in ResearchFish and all these other things, and it's like you try and get them onto just one system where it talks together.
Sorry. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, and we don't want to take your coffee break away from you. So thank you very much, University of Southampton. Thank you very much, guys.